If you've come here because you follow the Sales Talk with Joe video series, this is something very different I think you'll like. If it's your first time here, welcome. The videos I have been uploading so far have to do with sales and managing customers. Today I'm starting a new series on one of my passions, cars and vehicles. Now, a new Sales Talk with Joe will still be uploaded every Thursday, don't worry. This series, Talking Vehicles with Joe, is separate from Sales Talk with Joe, and I'll post this video every Friday. As you can tell from my channel name, I'm a car enthusiast, especially one brand in particular. I've always admired Cadillac, probably because my father did, and as much for what the vehicle represents about both cars and their owners as for the car itself. This begins a 2-video series about the history of Cadillac, my perception of where they are now and where they're going. There'll be more videos about cars coming in the future after these two. The Cadillac nameplate was born in 1902 when Henry Ford hired Henry Leland to try to pump up his struggling car manufacturing business. Henry Leland was an engineer who had at one time worked for Colt Firearms. Leland proposed creating a high-end vehicle with precision engineered and manufactured parts that were completely interchangeable from car to car, something unheard of in the early days of automotive manufacturing. In fact, Cadillac won the Dewar Trophy in 1908 for its precision manufacturing. Henry Ford's first car company failed, and Leland found himself the owner of Cadillac. He promptly sold it to William Durant's fledgling company known as General Motors. Interestingly, shortly after that, Leland decided to get back into the car business and started another company producing high-end luxury vehicles. He named that company after a former U.S. president he greatly admired, Abraham Lincoln. Yes, both Cadillac and Lincoln were founded by the same person. Shortly after GM purchased Cadillac, the president of the Cadillac division learned that an owner was killed when attempting to start his Cadillac. All vehicles were started by placing a metal crank in the engine and turning it to get the engine started. If the engine backfired, which would happen frequently, the crank would turn backwards with enough force that striking the person turning it could harm or even kill them. The Cadillac division president vowed that a Cadillac would never again kill its owner just because they were trying to start it. Charles Kettering's Dayton Electric Company, which was later purchased by GM and became known as Delco, was contracted to create an electric self-starter, which they successfully did. Along with other innovations, Cadillac once again earned the Dewar Trophy in 1912, earning it the nickname the Standard of the World. Throughout the years, Cadillac was known for innovative designs and high level of luxury. At various times in its existence, Cadillac offered vehicles with V12 and V16 engines, and Cadillac was also the first with innovations like the overhead valve V8, automatic headlight control, automatic temperature control of heating and air conditioning, and many other innovations that made operating a motor vehicle much more enjoyable. Cadillac was also known for its comfortable ride, easy handling, isolation from the outside world, and status that it projected. Every component in a Cadillac was the highest quality and functioned easily, precisely, and had long life. Now, unfortunately for Cadillac, starting in the late 1960s, many factors would converge to create challenging times, and in fact almost kill the brand as time went on. General Motors went on a far-reaching cost-cutting project that no division was immune to. Some of the cost-cutting measures resulted in noticeably reduced quality in items like interior materials. Cadillacs were still beautifully styled and very elegant, but cost-cutting was beginning to show. For example, in 1971 and 72, Cadillac doors were heavier than they'd ever been due to government requirements for crashworthiness. Cadillac's spindly door pull straps and attachments quickly failed and detached from the door. GM's solution was to have the dealer drill right through the decorative bracket and run an extra long screw to reattach the strap. It worked, but it looked like a homemade repair. Very un-Cadillac. Despite these shortcomings, Cadillac sales continued to rise, although Cadillac was losing market share to not only Lincoln in the personal luxury segment of Eldorado versus Continental Mark. It was also losing younger affluent buyers to makes like Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Audi. Cadillac answered that with the successful Seville model, which somewhat helped stem the tide of younger buyers seeking other mostly foreign brands. GM successfully downsized all of its full-size models in 1977, and despite its two main competitors, Chrysler and Lincoln, touting that they still offered traditional full-size models, Cadillac sales were strong. The new downsized models were much better driving than the larger old cars, yet rode almost as well, achieved the same level of quiet and isolation, and used up to 20% less fuel. Although Cadillac stubbed its toe by offering the corporate GM 350 diesel, it seemed to shake that off and continue on its mostly successful path. Through the late 70s and early 1980s, Cadillac sales remained steadily strong and their market share led the luxury segment. But things would change drastically starting in 1981. For its newly downsized 1977 models, Cadillac also downsized the massive 472 500 cubic inch V8 to 425 cubic inches. Horsepower was of course reduced, but torque remained strong to move the downsized models adeptly. In 1980, the engine was again downsized to 368 cubic inches, again with a slight reduction in horsepower, but it was still more than adequate for the vehicles. In 1981, Cadillac introduced its now infamous V864 engine management system. The system would deactivate cylinders in the engine based on many factors. The system was supposed to increase efficiency and reduce emissions. Now, cylinder deactivation is commonplace today, but in 1981, the technology just wasn't advanced enough to allow the system to work seamlessly and reliably. Uneven engine operation, rough transitions between modes, and outright failures occurred quickly. Cadillac dropped the system after 1 year, except in the commercial chassis vehicles. As if 1981 wasn't bad enough, here comes 1982 and the now universally despised HT4100 engine. An all-new design, the engine block was aluminum and heads were iron. It produced a rather measly 135 horsepower. It was greatly underpowered in a 4,000-plus pound vehicle. In addition, the technology that could allow an aluminum block and iron head to live together wasn't very good. Engines failed quickly, tarnishing Cadillac's reputation. According to many sources, Cadillac was supposed to downsize and move to a front drive platform in 1982. Thus, the new engine would have been more appropriate. But problems with the X platform, the Chevy Citation, Pontiac Phoenix, Oldsmobile, and Buick Skylark delayed that decision. Another huge mistake occurred in 1982 with the introduction of the Cimarron. A barely disguised Chevrolet Cavalier, the Cimarron was a response to luxury buyers' shift to smaller imports. Cadillac dealer network was threatening to abandon the Cadillac brand if something wasn't done. It was more than obvious what Cadillac did to create the Cimarron, and even though over time the Cimarron became quite a good vehicle, the nameplate was damaged beyond repair and Cimarron died a quiet and ignominious death in 1988. Cadillac worked quickly to rectify the 4100 engine issues, but the damage was done. Loyal and potential Cadillac buyers had enough. They began to defect to other brands, mostly imports. GM was convinced in the 1980s that gasoline was going to get up to $3 or more a gallon at that time, the equivalent of $8 to $10 a gallon today. They again downsized their cars. The first full-size downsized models were introduced in 1985. Unfortunately, all divisions' cars wound up looking very similar, which did Cadillac no favors, as its distinction as a prestige brand was blurred. On top of that, gasoline prices fell instead of climbing, making the smaller cars less appealing. Throughout the 1990s, Cadillac tried to recapture its former glory. It wound up offering a confusing array of front drive and rear drive vehicles with similar and familiar names. For example, buyers weren't sure if they were buying a Fleetwood if it was a front or rear drive model. Cadillac once again tried to capture the now full-blown defection from its brand as a prestige model for younger affluent buyers by introducing a model called Catera in 1997. The Catera was essentially a rebadged German Opel with some Cadillac trim added to it. While it was a good car, the Caddy that zigged failed, and it didn't capture the market and was quietly discontinued in 2001. Cadillac saw the shift from passenger cars to trucks and SUVs and Lincoln's success with the Navigator, and in 1998 introduced a response for the 1999 model year called the Escalade. They unfortunately made a similar and familiar mistake as they made with the Cimarron and the Catera. The first Escalade was little more than a rebadged Chevy Suburban. The Cadillac brand was in real jeopardy of failure. Cadillac did two things to revive the brand in the early 2000s. They reworked the Escalade into a much less recognizable offshoot of Suburban. It was much more of a Cadillac and in fact took over the sales leadership from the Lincoln Navigator as the prestige brand in that category. Escalade was and is a highly profitable vehicle for Cadillac and GM. Perhaps equally or even more important, Cadillac replaced the Catera with the CTS model introduced for the 2003 model year. The CTS styling was truly the first from Cadillac's newly launched Art and Science styling studio and was an instant success. The styling was very sharp, angular, and quite attractive. The car was well built and looked every bit the Cadillac and yet was attractive to potential import buyers. Cadillac had a winner. The CTS quickly became known as the car that saved Cadillac. Now stay tuned for my next video where I conclude the history of Cadillac, including their foray into the SUV arena, where they are now and where they seem to be headed. I'll see you then. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share this video with someone you know who'd find this interesting. I'll see you next week for more Talking Vehicles with Joe.